Tomato and cheese. I didn't get any tomato last time.
Do we need a sound check? Do we need a sound check?
I will shut it down and do a sound check and say, yeah. So the reset, Jack still comes out and we're taking a picture
Mic check one, mic one, mic one. Mic check one, mic one, mic one. Mic check one, mic one, mic one. Bass check, bass check, bass check, bass check. Better? Bass check, bass check, bass check. Treble check, treble check. Yeah. Mic. I won't go there again. What's that? Mic. Mic one, mic one. Check, check.
There's no tread at all. It's skin ball now. It's all around.
Mic one, mic one, mic one. Mic one, mic one. Check, check. Mic two, check, check, mic two.
high-end hum still.
Mic three, check, check, mic three.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. You see that red light there? It's way too high. Turn it down. Check 1 2. It's still too high. Check 1 1. Check. Now turn the top one. Check 1 2. Well, it went bye. Hello. Check 1. It's not going anywhere now. Now it's not going anywhere. 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. There's nothing now. 0 zip zilch. Check 1 2. 1 2 3. Do you hear anything? Charlie, can you hear me? Charlie, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Mark? Can you hear this?
Say something.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Are these? No, these aren't. These are in the right place, aren't they? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2, 3.
That's right. I moved it. Check. Yeah.
Check. 1, 2. They said they can't hear me up here. Right here. The people right here can't hear me.
I can't hear it up here either.
Check. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2. We need to find out if they can, if they have any. That's better. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now, Joe? Linda, can you hear me? You hear me now? No, you don't hear me? How about if I shout at you? 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2. There's a hum in there. Check. 1, 2, 3.
Might have a good idea. Might have to touch it. You were getting sound. We were having sound trouble.
I've got a backup. That's non-wireless.
Sound check, mic 1. Sound check, mic 1.
What do you got? Oh, this is the frequency? These speakers aren't on over here. Can they control that?
Sound check, mic 1. Sound check, mic 1.
So we're already live. Sound check. Yeah. Jack, you doing that, Bill? Bill, Jack, Bill. Jack, Bill works at he's at the TV station. Speedway chief. He's near the high end. Check to see if they have sound. He's got sound now. Check it.
Mic 1, check, check.
The high-end hum, that's the speaker that's the high-end hum. But he said the speakers seem to be off.
Howdy, how is this? Howdy? Is this better, howdy? Can you hear me? Okay. We have the Mulch King in the house. The Mulch King is in the house.
So where's Mark?
Hey, I gotta ask you a question. Are you not at the awards by your choice?
Am I at the award?
Not at the awards, MC.
The victory banquet?
Yeah, Vic, sorry.
I haven't done that job in, it's been at least 10 years, probably more than that.
Seems like only yesterday.
Well, when I was doing it, it was on Channel 13 or whatever local station, and ESPN. But it's not on ESPN anymore, so they have their own sports announcer, Dave Calabro. Over there feeding your face? Yeah. Good for you.
Tell you a little secret. I like Dave. He ain't that good.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I wouldn't do that for any amount of money.
What? Anchor the 500
On radio. That either. No, the victory banquet.
No, I don't even go.
You ready?
I have no desire to go.
I don't know how many.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2017 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are coming to you live from McGilvery Speedway at 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. Tonight's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the Verizon IndyCar Series. Founded in 1993 to spearhead Honda's entry into IndyCar racing, Honda Performance Development has overseen successful racing efforts at all levels of the sport, from karting and quarter midgets to IndyCar and prototype sports cars. HPD offers race engines and competition products for professional, amateur, and entry-level racers. For more information about HPD and the company's racing products, please visit hpd.honda.com. That's hpd.honda.com. We got to start off my comments by saying about 4 days ago, a young lady in here had a birthday. We didn't say anything about it, but I am now. Suzanne Smith had a birthday. Happy birthday. How many went to or watched the 500? Did you like was it a good race? Do you like the winner? Okay. That was good. How many watched the Detroit races? Did you like the winner? Yeah, that's. They commented on a number of occasions that he went around the paddock, and we got the car to win, and got a little people upset about it, but he did what he said, so they couldn't say too much. Next week, my guest will be, this weekend starts the SVRA. It's the Open Wheel World Challenge. And we'll be here this weekend. And next weekend, my guests are going to be the president and CEO of the SVRA, Mr. Tony Perella, and some very special guests he's bringing along with him, but he didn't tell me who it's going to be. But I have a feeling it won't be Buddy Schmutz with a broom. My first guests are two gentlemen that everybody here, I'm sure, is familiar with. And those of you who listen to the IMS broadcast of the 500 are familiar with this voice. Sitting next to me first is a gentleman who has a voice that's recognizable and is probably the most respected broadcaster in all of motorsports. He's given up his mulching business and is now taken to walking dogs for the neighborhood people. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Bob Jenkins.
I'm just doing flower watering now. It's a little less stress.
Yeah. And sitting next to him is a gentleman that I have had the privilege of knowing for a number of years. Have spent time up on the top of lifts and on top of roofs and watched races and been his spotter. He is started off as a youngster trying to emulate what it takes to be a broadcaster into a recorder, and now he gets to do it for the real thing. He is the anchor for the IMS radio network for the Indianapolis, or the IndyCar events, and he is now the voice of the Indianapolis 500. Please welcome Mr. Mark Janes.
Thanks, John.
Mark, I have commented on a number of occasions that the job you now have fits you like a glove. It's
Thank you.
something you've wanted to do. You and I have talked about it a lot. It's something you dreamed about. Now that you got it, is it more pressure than you thought? Is it less? Or are you getting to where your broadcast team coordinates? I mean, all of you guys work together great.
Well, I think, and Bob can attest to this, there's a fair amount of pressure at places like Detroit and Long Beach and Barber. But much like for the drivers and the teams, Indianapolis is totally separate in every way. When we gave last year the opportunity for Bob and Paul Page and Mike King to give their reflections on their tenures, all of them said, especially Bob's comments stood out to me. Hardest thing that he has ever done, but he enjoyed it, and I think that's very, very accurate. It's mentally and emotionally exhausting. It's a very long day from start to finish because of everything that is going on, in addition to the magnitude of the event. I'm thankful that it's only once a year, but I can't wait to do it again in 2018 for sure.
Are the drivers familiar with you and your crew, so when you want an interview, you don't have a problem, you can talk to almost anybody at any time?
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that lends itself to our overall success is that a number of those people, Chris Pollock, who is a master at master control. You were gracious enough to have Chris on your show with me a couple of months ago. Chris and I have worked on the network together for over 20 years. Chris Denary started a couple of years after I did. Jake Query has, I think, been with us for 10 now. Nick Yeoman, 7. Michael Young, 8, 9, or 10. Rob Howden is a guy that, while Rob has only been with the network a couple of years, he has years of motorsports experience, and he's a nice fit. Kevin Lee, been with the network and now with television, anchoring races on television. Dave First, an immense talent and a guy that's been at it a long time. So I think you throw Davey Hamilton, Donald into the mix, and I'm managing the 27 New York Yankees, for gosh sakes. You just stay out of their way and let them do what it is they do.
What I like the most is when you ask Davey a question. He's got years, everything that could have happened. Sheet time, he's got it. Hit a wall, he's done it. Yeah. Win races, he's done it. Build cars, he's done it. He understands. You ask him a question, you give him time to answer it, and that's what I like to listen to, what he has to say.
Well, the guy sitting next to me, I thought was a master in his ESPN broadcast days of letting the late Benny Parsons and Ned Jarrett be Benny and Ned, and Bob relied on them and his pit reporters for their expertise. And it was kind of Bob's philosophy, and he can correct me if he'd like, because he used to anyway. But I mean, your job is to rely on those people and use their talents and get the thing in and out of the breaks and keep it moving forward. And if there's anyone that I try to closely emulate in terms of how the broadcast is managed, it's certainly the guy sitting next to me for sure.
You started when ESPN started. You were one of the original broadcasters with ESPN. When you got into broadcasting, was motorsports what you wanted, or you wanted to be a baseball stick and ball guy or something?
Actually, when I graduated high school and went to IU, my desire was to be a disc jockey. And that was because I love music, and radio was so different back then because you had stations like WLS and WING and IFE, and all of those stations were not too far from where I grew up, so I could listen to all of them, WLS at night. And I just loved to listen to disc jockeys and them do their thing. And so that's what I wanted to be. But I soon found out that they didn't make as much money as I thought they did. And so, I had this love of racing anyway, and so I decided to go in the direction. So I concentrated, was the word they used at IU, in motorsport or in sports journalism, and that's how it all came about. So when I graduated from IU, I took a couple of jobs in northern Indiana and then came here in '72, and that's when my effort to get to know people who were already in motorsports broadcasting and hopefully get into the biz, as of course it turned out I did.
And quite successfully, if I might add.
Well, yeah, and again, I will never understand why. I think I was there when nobody else was available or nobody else wanted the job. So, I just kind of hung in there, and here I am, retired, and glad that it all happened.
Is it tough being on the PA at the Speedway for the 2 or 3 weeks of May? I mean.
Oh, no.
No?
Well, see, I don't do anything for 11 months out of the year. I really don't do anything. I sit around the house.
Water flowers.
I do water flowers when come springtime, but I don't mow my yard. I don't shovel snow. I don't get out if it's cold. I don't do anything. And so when May comes, I realize that I have to play. Yeah, I play a little euchre. But when May comes, I realize that, I'm going to have to work maybe 10 days in a row, and that's not going to be easy, but it is. The schedule this year was better than it ever has been. I did have a couple of days off in that week of practice before the qualifying. And, I don't have to be there until 10:30 in the morning, and I could leave at 6:05, except there are people that grab me by the throat and drag me to this place up by the fourth turn, where they have usually some cold beverages to drink, and I do that. And I probably shouldn't, but I do. So, no, it's totally enjoyable. I'm kind of like Mark. I'm really glad when it's over, because I can take a breath and think, well, I do have to do that other race in whenever it is, July, August, I don't know. But then come the middle part of June or the latter part of June, and I'm thinking, wow, I can't wait for the month of May to roll around and we can do this all again.
You've had the opportunity, the privilege, I suppose, to work with some really good people over your career. And that had to be nice. As Mark was pointing out, you had guys that knew the sport, knew what it was like, and could see what was going on, and you got to listen to them, throw to them, get their input. At the end of your career, do you feel that maybe you picked up a little bit? When you watch a race now, you see things that you might not have seen prior?
Well, the only thing I think about is I was a lot better back then than I am now. Those early NASCAR races, I have watched a little bit of because everything was so much different back then and so much better. But see, I'm getting these digs and nobody is getting. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh,
Cold beverages in 4, I think.
Yeah, well, Benny and Ned, what can you say about them? I love working with them personally, and they were as good as you can find as in terms of explaining what was happening on the racetrack. I never really worked with anybody I didn't like. I did in the early part of the tenure at ESPN. I worked with people like Roger Ward and Pancho Carter and some of the drivers that I really admired back then. So that was one of the big perks of my job.
I still think of your comment about Benny. Whenever you travel, his suitcase had 3 pair of socks, a couple pair of shorts, and 17 shirts.
Yeah. One meal, one shirt was Benny's motto, and it usually was the case because he'd dribble something down him every meal.
Mark, you forgot to mention one member of your staff, of your broadcast team. And it's kind of interesting. I watched her do some interviews here at the Speedway, and without exception, she needs a ladder. I'm talking about Katie Hargett, because everybody's at least twice as tall as she is. She's good at what she does. She'll ask a question and go, I get a kick out of watching her, but she's good at it, and she enjoys the radio part.
Yeah, she has an opportunity to work with us a couple of times each year. We use her at St. Petersburg, mainly when it's an ESPN ABC race, and then we had her with us in Detroit. And the kid is just a sponge. I mean, she is a ready, willing participant in advice, critiques, observations. It's a nice fit for us when she's with us. Very low maintenance, and she comes in and fits into the scheme of things the way we have them constructed, and she seems to really enjoy herself. And some of the folks on our crew, she's known that her and Nick Yeoman went to college together. They've known one another for a long time, so there's a history there and a comfort level in terms of knowing one another. And she's been around us now for a few years and worked several races with us, so she gets the structure of what we do and how we do it. And we're lucky to have her in. And when we bring Kevin in for the month of May as well, when you can bring someone in with Kevin's talent and ability and knowledge and experience, it's very beneficial to us.
Do you have meetings like in the old days before the race? You get everybody together and lay out what you have in mind and what you're going to see from where you are and all that kind of thing. Do you have broadcast meetings or whatever?
For the 500, certainly. And on a race weekend, typically, as I said, it's so much different. And it's kind of, for us, it becomes old hat because we do it, 14, 15 times a year. All I do is I look at the minute by minute that's prepared by the production company and by IndyCar, and then I line that up against our log and what time we go on the air, and I figure out how many breaks I can get in, and I have to time everything in, Donald's Moment, Motorsports History, Mike King's Firestone Performance Report, and all of that stuff. When I was fortunate enough to be named as the anchor, I immediately added the invocation and the anthem back into the pre-race show, because I think that helped bring the folks closer to the racetrack that weren't there. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. We added a couple of elements. We have, right after the command to start engines, we have a driver give a lap around. We record a driver telling us what it's like to take a lap around the racetrack. And so, we have to time into all of those elements. And I make sure everyone has a copy of that prior to that. Matter of fact, before I came over here, I did the one for Texas this weekend. So that way, everyone has an idea going into the broadcast of what's expected of them and when. And they seem to be very receptive to it, and it seems to give them a level of comfort, and they don't have any questions about, okay, when am I going to be on, what am I going to do, how I'm going to, I don't worry about how they do it. I just let them know when they're going to be on, and I let them take it from there.
See what I mean? That's a hard job. I mean, you got to plan what you're going to do,
That's right.
And then you go on the air and you have to execute it, and you have to execute it on time, and it's just more than I wanted to do. I mean, again, I was glad to be able to do it, but it's difficult.
2 years ago, we were in Florida for Christmas, and Bob was still spending his winters in Florida at that time. And my favorite place is at Indian Rocks Beach. It's called the Pub, and I met Bob there for lunch. And we got there before he did, and I did a double take. I mean, I'm seated at an outside table on the causeway there, and out walks this guy wearing a pair of deck shoes, cargo shorts, a T-shirt. I don't know that he'd shaved in a month and a half. He was tanned, and he looked as relaxed as any human being I'd ever seen in my life. And it was this guy right here. So, and I thought, good for him. And I hope that's where I want to be someday, and that's how I want to do it. So good for you.
As I said, I think on my last appearance here, you got to catch me at the right time because there are only certain weeks that I shave and take a bath.
That's right. Good for you. Well deserved.
My dad used to tell me if you were supposed to take 2 baths in a week, there'd be 2 Saturdays.
That's right.
Now, do you get, Bob, to interview drivers? Do you, I mean, I remember, they used to bring them up once in a while.
yeah.
Do they still do that?
Yeah, we did it once this year.
Oh, really? Did you have to practice for that?
Well, it was Johnny Rutherford, so it was
Oh.
pretty easy. It was kind of a slow period, and we saw him walking down pit lane, and one of our guys went down and got him and brought him up to the booth. But no, I don't do a great deal of that. For one thing, I never thought I was very good at interviewing, and still don't. So I don't like to do it. But somebody like JR, you can just ask him 2 or 3 questions and let him go, and you've got a good interview.
Yeah. It was good to see him back here again, although he's not the same JR he used to be.
Yeah, he's hurting, no question about it, because of Betty. But he's trying to keep up personal appearances and act like he is enjoying himself. But yeah, it is a little different.
It's amazing how ESPN started, how they really got big into motorsports with the Thursday Night Thunders and all that kind of thing. But it seems that things have kind of changed a bit. Is there?
Notice that, huh?
Yeah, I did notice.
Yeah.
And I've read, and I don't know how true it is, although I asked Andy about this, that they're losing a lot of subscribers. And I made a suggestion because when one guy in particular comes on, I turn it off. I don't care. He's done about as much basketball as I have, if that. And he gets ranting and raving about athletes and sports and stuff, and I'm thinking, you never played. What the heck would you know? So I just turn it off. I don't want to listen.
I don't know the last time I watched ESPN. I really don't. I never stop to see what they're doing because I know they're not doing something that I enjoy, and so I just don't watch them at all. Once in a while, I will go to NBCSN because they do motorsports on occasion, and some of the other channels. But I think it's pretty obvious to me, and maybe some other people, I hope so, that they ought to go back to what got them where they were at one time, and that was not some of these idiotic programs that they're doing now. As you said, motorsports was one of the first that they wanted to do, and all the way up through all of the Thunders and everything, I think that really helped them with their ratings and made them a major player in broadcasting. But what they're doing now, I think, is the wrong path. But so what are they doing? They're firing everybody, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year when they do motorsports, because Best Week is gone and Jerry Punch is gone, and most of the other people are not going to be around next year. So we'll see.
Strange thing, a former broadcaster who got let go by ESPN he said, I called Jerry and I said, you're getting to the age that you're going to be gone. And Jerry went, obviously he knew what he was talking about. And that's a shame, because Jerry's been around a long time. He understands if you got some kind of a crash or something, he understands what the injuries are and can translate that. So when you listen, you know what he's talking, what happened. But I guess experience doesn't count. He
was good at football too. In fact, I think he enjoyed doing football as much as he did auto racing. So they've lost a guy who could do both sports equally well.
And that can be said for Jack Arute.
Yep.
And Jack loved football.
Yep.
Yes, he loved racing. I guess, is he still on Sirius?
I have no idea. I saw him at the Speedway this year, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I don't know.
I saw
what's
him in a
going
distance as well. Mark, the story has circulated that as a youth that you had a broadcast bug in you and that you actually recorded yourself. Is that a true story, or is that just something to make you look good?
Well, I
Nothing can make him look
Yeah, that's
good.
what I was going to say. Bob made me to the punchline. I don't know that exists, but yeah, that's a true story. My mother's in Florida right now. I can bring her here, Don, and have her validate that for you if you'd like.
I'll take your word. Poor girl.
But no, it was like I said, it was an elementary principal who told me I was a horrible softball player and I had no shot of ever being a Major League Baseball player. But because I couldn't keep my mouth shut and I love sports, I might pursue broadcasting or journalism. And he set about the task of telling me how to do that, how to go about it and whatnot. And I started making up, I would watch games on television, call them back into a cassette recorder, and then started making up mock Indy 500s. And all these years later, this is where I landed. And interesting, I sent Bob a text. I was out in the garage. I bought an old pickup truck a couple of weeks ago, and it's all it has is a cassette player in it. And I was out in the garage and was digging through a box, and I found the 96 500, which was my first year with the network. Bob was the anchor. And he my pre-race interviews were Buzz Calkins, who was the points leader at the time, and Johnny Unser. And for some reason, I don't know if there's a problem with a cassette deck or what, Bob, but you and I both sounded a lot different than we sound right now.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was a lot better back then than I am now.
But it was fun to listen to. I listened to the entire pre-race show up to the command of the pre-race festivities and everything. And Howdy Bell, who's here tonight, was part of that broadcast. And a number, Ken Double, the late Gary Lee, Bob Lamey, Chuck Marlowe, some dear friends we've lost for sure. But your pit reporters that day were me, Mike King, and Vince Welch. That's how long ago that was.
21 years, huh?
Yeah, this was my 22nd. Yeah, my 22nd 500.
And look at Vince's mom and dad are here, and they look younger than he is. I don't quite understand that.
Well, Bob and I said that's what this business does to you.
A question I had on my notes, but I got somebody up here for both of your comments. What did you think of the Rookie of the Year, Alfonso over Ed Jones?
Mark, you go first.
Should they have been co-rookies?
No.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for both of them. I mean, no disrespect to Ed Jones intended. He had a whale of a month, as did Fernando Alonso, and that's why I've always had a hard time with being a part of processes like that, especially when there are more than one deserving candidate. And that's not the first time that's happened, and it won't be the last. But I mean, Ed was very, very good. There's no question. But so was Alonso, and was it his fault that Honda cut loose on him? Where would he have finished? But again, it did, and that's the reality of it. I mean, there's arguments on both sides, and I think had Ed been given Rookie of the Year, I think that there would have been plenty of outcry, and moaning about that, and perhaps the only way that could have been done to everyone's satisfaction was for there to have been co-rookies of the year, and I think what Rick Mears and Larry Rice were co-rookies of the year at the 500 one year.
First of all, I don't think that having the highest finishing position is really a criteria or a major criteria for selecting a Rookie of the Year. I also do not believe that a person who has won 2 world championships and is an experienced driver in Formula One and not necessarily in IndyCar, but I just have a hard time considering a person like that as Rookie of the Year. I think you have to look beyond that and look to perhaps the guy whose performance during the month indicates that he hopefully is going to be around a long time. And that's why I voted for Ed Jones, and that's why I'm glad that I did.
One of the comments that One of the comments that I heard about that was a number of people said, well, he didn't have any media coverage. Well, against Alonso, of course not. I mean, they said, Ed Jones, who's that? Well, now they know who Ed Jones is, and I think that may have hurt him a little bit.
Well, I made the comment just before the green flag dropped, or just before the command was given, and I said that if you're looking for a dark horse, a guy who has performed this year mirroring what we saw from Alexander Rossi this year, go with Ed Jones, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, he was fast all month, he was clean. He just reminded me of somebody like Alexander Rossi, and that's another reason why
He's had a good year, period, all in all.
yeah,
he really
yeah.
has.
The first 5 races
yeah.
were just incredibly.
Yep, sure enough.
Well, I think, speaking of Rossi, I think, a lot of people said, well, he backed into that one and he got lucky. He showed this year he's the real McCoy. He's the real deal. He can drive a car.
Well, yeah. He did what he had to do last year to win the 500. He was given instructions as to what number they needed to make that would allow him enough fuel to cross the start-finish line, and he did. This year, it was obvious that at least in the first part of the race, he was told to go as fast as you can, and he was impressive, and I think that that showed that he is capable of winning a race with speed and a good car and talent rather than holding back and saving fuel.
I think without question. And I also believe, as Alonso said, in my entire career, the 3 weeks or so I've been here in Ann Arbor, I have never done more interviews, posed for more pictures, signed more autographs than I did here ever in Formula One. And that's true. When the guys were here in Formula One, you couldn't see them for anything. I mean, but he seemed to enjoy it. He was friendly. Fans stopped him. He talked to him. He posed for pictures. He signed.
I think all of them who have come over to do that have felt the same way. Rubens Barrichello, when he came a few years ago, felt the same way. I mean, he thoroughly enjoyed it. And others like Ed Jones and Chilton and Rossi and some of those guys, Sato, who all had experience in Formula One or their latter series, they find it to be a refreshing change when they get here in terms of the media access, and especially the access that the fans have.
Did you think Sato is a good winner? You think he'll be a good winner?
I think anybody that wins the 500 is a good winner because it's the Indianapolis 500. It's always a good story, no matter what, no matter who. It's a life-changing experience for that driver, and I know that when he went down pit road, his former crew at AJ Foyt Racing came out to shake his hand. There were a lot of drivers that. Even guys who had expressed some aggravation or frustration with him on the racetrack from time to time seemed genuinely happy for him. And I think Tony Kanaan put it best, and he knows as well as anyone, a first-time winner is always a cool thing, and good for him.
And I think the fact that AJ went up, even in Detroit, went up and greeted him and congratulated him, I think says something which most people who don't know AJ, they know what they read. He's a cantankerous, but he's really not that bad. And as of course he's getting older, he's getting a little softer. I don't mean between the ears, necessarily. But anyway, it was a good race. It was a fun race. Did you? Oh, you didn't watch Detroit, did you, Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you have the sound down and listen to the radio, Bob?
No, but I probably should have. How's that?
I would agree with that. Thank you.
I will for Texas.
Thank you very much.
Although Texas is awfully late, I got to be in bed by 8 o'clock. So
Take a nap, Bob.
I'll record
Take a nap.
I'll record it.
Okay.
And I always say I'm not going to do anything that will allow me to know who won, and then I do, and I'd hear that nothing serious happened, so I just erase it and go water the flowers.
What time do you have to take a snooze at night? For Pete's sake, you're not that old.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you don't do anything. You said you don't do anything all day, so how can you get tired?
I sleep.
Oh.
No, I don't go to bed at 8 o'clock, but I'm early to bed and early to rise. How's that?
Sounds like fun to me, I guess. When do you depart for the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Thursday afternoon, and we'll get to the racetrack early Friday morning and have a practice session and then go qualifying, and then they come back and have another practice session late Friday evening, and then we go racing Saturday night and head back home on Sunday.
2-day event, huh?
Yeah,
Who else is there besides IndyCar?
I believe the trucks are there. They traditionally run with
Oh,
Indy.
that's right, yeah. That's a real nail biter. Well, it is. I know the broadcaster should be drawing more people. I think he is. You know, I have noticed because there's a way to get around which shows how many people are listening to you, and I stumbled on it one day, and it still works. They haven't caught me yet, but your listening audience is growing dramatically.
Yeah, thank you. We hear that from those that are involved in keeping track of those numbers, and you know, the world's getting a lot smaller for sure. There's so many more ways to listen to what we do and how we do it, and you know, I know that the response seems to be overwhelmingly positive, and we're honored and flattered by that. Always open to suggestions, and you know, I think again the thing that makes it work is the fact that we're all fans first, you know, and then you combine that, I think, with some people who are very, very gifted professionally, and a healthy respect for one another. I think all of those things combine to produce what I hope is a product that people continue to enjoy.
Well, several of the folks here tonight were telling me they watch the race, but they turn the audio down and listen to radio. I said, you listen to that anchor. We don't pay much attention to him. It's the reporters we pay attention to.
We have a healthy respect for our friends at television for sure, and they work very, very hard at it. But when we hear that people are entertained by that, it's flattering, and we appreciate it a great deal for sure.
And I think, you know, I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Unfortunately for Mark, I know how to text him, and I do. And constantly, and I critique what I think, but 99.9, it's all positive. I think it's, you know, the group you have and the people you have work well together. It's great to listen to, and it's fun. And also the next thing is I invite him to come here. When he's got time, he shows up. Bob had to put his watering can down to come, but he made it too. Yeah.
You do your watering in the morning,
Oh,
so the flowers will get through the day.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, I got to thank both of you for taking the time. I know I contacted you prior to May, and you said, no, after May.
Yeah. Tuesday nights, there was something going on during May on Tuesday nights. I can't remember what it was, but
Everything.
yeah. Yeah. One was the thing we did at the museum with Al Unser Jr. and Scott Goodyear. That was a blast. Were any of you present for that? Boy, that was a great evening.
There.
Yeah, that was a great evening. Donald just asked the right questions, and Scott and Al got in, you know, some really good digs at each other, and it was truly an entertaining evening.
And Eddie Cheever says one of the smartest drivers I know is Scott Goodyear. He said, this guy really understands. He said, I drove the car. He masterminds. He said, he's really great. So I thank both of you for taking the time to come here.
Yep, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
And we'll be listening to you, Mark. And I come back to my mind every once in a while that Buddy McAtee had said here one night, 5 or 6 years from now, network television will be passé. It'll be internet, you know, digital internet stuff. And by God, he's not. Now you can watch the race on Facebook. I didn't know you could do that. I got to put this thing on Facebook. But in fact, somebody I talked to today, I said I don't have I just moved. I don't have my television. I watch it on Facebook. Oh, it's everywhere. Yep. You're everywhere.
That's what we like to hear. Yeah. Thank you. Glad to be here. Anytime I can spend a little quality time with Bob, it's a good thing. So
yeah,
thanks.
Same here.
Good night. Yep.
Oh, so now I got to invite you for him. Oh boy.
Yeah.
It'll get me here a lot quicker. I'll tell you that. If I'm sharing the stage with Bob, that'll seal the deal for sure. So.
All right. Two of the best in the business, Bob Jenkins, Mark James.
Thank you.
Thanks. My next guest is sitting in the back. He'll be coming this way, so I will remind you that if you're looking to take a two-seater ride, it's not too late. You can do it. Look on IndyRacingExperience.com, find a date that works for you at the Speedway. And when you sign up for it, you just put there, what the heck, JS1, or SJ1, I'm sorry, SJ1, and you get a 50% discount. So do that, take a ride, you will be glad you did, it'll be the most fun you've ever had, and you'll know why these people love to drive race cars. If you need embroidery of any kind for anything, a hat, shoes, shirt, jacket, it doesn't matter, Stitches too on Gasoline Alley is there to help. They're in the Hinchman building. Give Fran a call, she loves to talk, tell her what you need, what you got, she'll take care of it. You can reach her at 317-271-3444. And is it time for you to get new insurance? It's always recommended that you get insurance and check every once in a while to make sure you're getting the best price. Do what I did. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. He's located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. Let him give you a quote. You might be surprised you get better coverage for less money. His number is 317-248-0070. Whether it's for your home, your car, or you have a commercial building, you need insurance, call Mike, 317-248-0070. And as I mentioned, upcoming this weekend, the 7th to the 11th, the 2017 Open Wheel World Challenge will be taking place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And it's the SVRA that will be there. So you check it out. In the following week is the 2017 Brickyard Vintage Racing Invitational, 14th to the 18th, again at the Speedway. And as I said, the president and CEO of SVRA will be here next week. My next guest is a gentleman that I have had the privilege of knowing for a number of years. I don't know that he's so happy about it, but I certainly am. He is a doctor of mental health and social work. He has been at the IUPUI, I think, since 1993, I believe. He taught for a while at Missouri State University. He got his PhD from University of Kansas, and he's a Jayhawk fan through and through. Whether it's football, baseball, it doesn't matter, basketball, if it's a Jayhawk game, if he's not there, he's crying. He plays hockey. He goes to the Pacer games. He goes to the Colt games. And somehow he has time to go to most of the short tracks around the country and around the Midwest. He was just inducted into the Knoxville National Sprint Car Hall of Fame. Please welcome Pat Sullivan.
Thank you, Don.
I get your Facebook stuff from time to time, and I'm amazed. You get a Friday night, you're in St. Louis, or you're in somewhere at a sporting event, and you said, "Well, I have to go because my wife's a sports nut."
I didn't say I had to go, but my wife likes sports, which helps a great deal, and so we're empty nesters, and that certainly helps now. But you only live so long, and I don't want to spend much of it sitting on the couch. So I want to do things.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Are you still broadcasting on the PA at a lot of tracks?
Oh yeah, I will be. Let's see, I will be at Bloomington on Friday night. I'll be at Lawrenceburg on Saturday. I'll leave on Monday, and then I will go to the east, and I'll be at Grandview, Lincoln, 2 days at Williams Grove, Port Royal, and Susquehanna. That's certainly on the docket. Then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to do the NASCAR race at Sonoma, which I've done for a long time now. And then I get back, it starts getting to be a sprint week. So, yeah, I'm still pretty busy.
How come you're not tonight starts Indiana Midget Week?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have a full-time job, and USAC time to time has had someone that serves as a primary announcer, but Levi Jones has asked me the last couple of years to have some dates circled in, and he did that once again. And we carved out the Silver Crown dates for certain, and the East Coast. I'm going to go back to the East Coast when the midgets go there, and I'm going out to Missouri and Kansas and some places. So a nice, good announcer from the state of Illinois is going to be at Montpelier tonight, and I think I'll pick it up. Brad will be at Lincoln Park, and then Brad and I will be at Bloomington, then I'll be at Lawrenceburg on Saturday.
I was going to ask you, how is Brad? I know he's
Brad's
a coach.
great. Brad's been fantastic, and one thing I certainly want to underscore is the whole Sprint Car Hall of Fame thing would have never happened without Brad. There's just no question about that. I mean, I get it in part because I do more than just work as a PA announcer, as you well know. I mean, I'm a writer for Sprint Car Imaging Magazine, but in terms of recognition and getting out there, when Brad joined me the second year that I moved to Indiana, then obviously that just took off for both of us, and we've been announcing together for 23 years.
And we talk about Brad Dickinson.
Right.
In case anybody forgotten what we're talking about. His dad was a fantastic car builder.
Very good competition welding cars. There was one at competition welding car at Knoxville last Saturday, which I got a big bang out of, and certainly wanted to tell Bob. But Brad's a tremendous public address announcer. He has a traditional public address announcer's voice. I don't. I never have. I have the voice I got's the one I've got, but I tried to make up for it in other ways.
Now, you are a doctor in mental health and social work,
Sure.
and you've got many awards for your work, and you've got some of the highest in Indiana. You got the Sagamore
Yep,
of the Wabash
I
here,
did.
which is the highest you can get. How do you have time to train or teach kids at a college level, and then you're gone all over the country?
Well, one of the great things about when you teach at the graduate level, which I primarily do, not entirely, I teach at all three levels, undergraduate, master's, and PhD. But the way our classes are structured, they tend to be once a week, 3 hours long. So there's always a little bit of slack in my schedule. I'm a full professor with tenure. I work very hard. I still write and publish and that sort of thing. My dean knows what I do. The university highlighted even some of what's happened recently. So no one really cares. It's a bottom line business. At the end of the day, are my teaching evaluations good? Do I write? Do I do research and do I publish? And if I do, then everyone's pleased with my performance. So it gives me a little more freedom.
How do you do the research? You're on the go all the time. I mean, almost
Yeah, well,
literally.
that's okay. I mean, I don't like to sleep very well. In fact, I really hate it. I really, seriously, I just going to bed at night's like death to me. I can't stand it. I'd just as soon be awake, and I fight it to the bitter end. That's a true story.
Now, two of the guys that joined you in being
Yeah.
inducted, Dave Darland and Tony Elliott, and those two guys did battle at Kokomo like probably no two other guys did in history. And
Well, and
you
I'll add
did-
a
and
third
you
guy. I'll add a third guy who drove all night to be there for the ceremony, and that was Kevin Thomas.
Yeah.
I mean, in my personal opinion, Kevin Thomas, Dave Darland, and Tony Elliott defined an entire generation of sprint car racing in Indiana. And at a time when traditional sprint car racing was barely hanging on, those three were the standard bearers, and it was a pleasure to watch them work. I mean, they were just so good. And Dave won last Sunday night, for God's sakes. I mean, he's not going to win the bushel baskets like he used to, but those guys they was just, and I would get paid. I was getting paid to watch that. That was a great thing. My wife raised a little bit of an issue at one point, but then I said to her, "Well, I got a hobby. Like people have boats and they fish and they hunt." I go, "It's weird. Mine comes with a check at the end of the night." And suddenly she really liked my hobby a lot, so she was good with it.
But you got to call for 20 years those three guys doing battle, and that had to be exciting as a broadcaster to be able to watch all that. 'cause
It
these guys
was,
were
but I
fabulous.
want to tell you something right now, and that is that we have in the United States Auto Club now, people, the question was asked in Knoxville whether I was anywhere close to retiring, and the answer, it wasn't phrased that way, but I jumped the gun. Because I have a lot of young guys come up to me, and they sort of have that look in there like, "Well, you're going to retire, aren't you?" And the answer is no, I'm not, and I don't want to. I mean, eventually maybe I should. Somebody will tell me that I should. But I'm going to tell you why, and that is because right now, not only do we have incredibly talented guys in the United States Auto Club, I mean, we've got this battle going on that primarily involves Chad Baysflug, Justin Grant, Chris Wyndham, and you throw in Tyler Courtney, Sunshine in that mix, and Chase Stockton's right there. It's not just that they're good, because they're really good. They're as good as any sprint car drivers we've ever seen. They are great guys. I mean, they are genuinely great human beings. They're smart, they're thoughtful, they're respectful to each other. We are in the midst now of almost a resurgence of the Larry and Gary show with those guys. It's tremendous, and so it comes around. I mean, I think sometimes when you're an old guy, you want to say, well, you know, it's never like it was with Darlin and Elliott and et cetera. Well, it is. But I'm certainly fortunate to have seen Tony Elliott and Dave Darlin, Kevin Thomas in their prime.
And back, as they say in the day, the drivers were always good guys, but when they had a discussion, they went out in the parking lot and settled it, and then you'd see them swapping parts because some of them got bent, and after discussing their situation, they'd swap parts and help each other on their cars.
Well, it's an emotional sport. I mean, let's face it, and you know, I think sometimes in an era where we have a lot of rich dads buying cars that a kid can wad up and another one rolls off the trailer, there's no sense of the consequence of what just happened. I think sometimes a different ethic develops, which isn't necessarily good. You know, sprint car racing's serious business. I mean, you're talking about 750, 800 horsepower engines at that way. You can't sort of do it. I mean, you got to be committed, and you got to be committed to do it right. And sometimes the emotions do boil over. You know, I don't know if that's necessarily good or bad. It just is a reality. But I remember Brian Tyler, who was one of the great champions, 96, 97 champion, got fined $10,000 for USAC in the 90s because he punched another competitor in the nose at Eldora. And Brian had one of the great lines I thought of all time. He said, where I came from, when you were mad at someone, you didn't take it out on somebody else's race car. That guy that owned that car didn't do it to you. That guy did it. And so I'm going to deal with that guy one-on-one. And I thought Brian had a really good point about that. You hope you never get to that point, but you're going to in racing.
And the Silver Crown, I think, is, you know, Tanner Swanson is doing well. He and his brother do battle. It's slowly crawling back to where it used to be a good series.
Let's talk about those guys. I mean, there's two kids that got degrees in agricultural economics. They're incredibly smart kids. They're not kids. They're young men, but they're incredibly articulate. They're so good. I mean, it does drive me crazy. I'm not going to get into all the politics part of it, but here's Kody Swanson. Here's Bobby Santos III. Bobby Santos III won a NASCAR modified championship, NASCAR's oldest division. He's had a cup of coffee. Kody Swanson's had a cup of coffee. For the life of me, these guys can drive the pavement and drive it well. And I like all forms of motorsports, but when one more of those guys goes south, it's like a little piece of me dies. Because I so desperately want to see them right over here having an opportunity. And I know it's complicated, and I don't want to minimize that, but those guys are so good. We were going to have a legitimate 40 cars at the fairgrounds, legitimately. I'll tell you, the USAC right now, Levi Jones is doing a tremendous job. Kurt Spridgen is doing a tremendous job. Richie Murray is doing a tremendous job. Dick Jordan is always there. But one of the things that those guys have done, and they've insisted on this, and I really applaud this, is to say, we're not going to send out these trumped-up entry lists that have like 45 names on it. We really know that 10 of them aren't going to show up. They're sending out entry lists that are legit. They were going to have 40 cars at the fairgrounds. That was a big loss because that has come back. Andy Hillenberg put a lot of elbow grease into getting that series back, even to the point of dragging a car around with an open trailer. But that's old-style championship racing, and I just love it. I mean, we got to get young people to understand it. It's different than sprint car racing, but it has come back on. I'm really excited about that.
Now, among everything else we've talked about, all the sports you attend, you're also on the staff at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 3 weeks of May. And when there's a press conference or something, you're the organizer. How long have you been doing that?
I think since 1999. It's interesting. In the dawn of the Indy Racing League, my first job at the Speedway I got courtesy of Bill Marvel. Bill Marvel saw me announce a race at I-44 Speedway in Lebanon, Missouri, and he came up to me and says, "You love this stuff, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, and I'm an open wheel guy." And he said, "Would you like a job at the Speedway?" Well, yeah, I would like a job at the Speedway. But when the Indy Racing League developed, some of the people in the PR department understood at that time that I really knew who some of those participants were, and they didn't. So they asked me to join more the PR side of things. And then Ron Green, who I'd known from his days from USAC and then at what we still call Indianapolis Raceway Park, was the one with Bill Marvel asked me to sort of take over, sort of take the baton from Bill. And what an incredible honor that is. I mean, I pinch myself every day. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, they had a trouble. You know, they had to end up pay. I used to get paid a long time ago. They pay us minimum wage or a little bit more than that. I don't know what it is. And the woman came to me and says there was a problem with my punch, with my card, and she's sort of fussing about it, which she should. I'm not trying to make fun of her, but she says, "Well, Pat, you're just not going to get paid if we get this right." And I said, "I don't care. That's the least of my worries is getting paid. I'm getting to work at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That wing and wheel matters to me." You know, I heard Mark talking. I did a press conference with Johnny Rutherford, and Johnny Rutherford knows my first name. How did that happen? I was like anybody else. I was in the snake pit. I dreamed about just getting into Gasoline Alley one time, to get into Gasoline Alley, just to be in it. And now I'm sitting there, of all the thousands of people, you know, that I get an opportunity to do that. It's miraculous to me. You know, at the Hall of Fame, I used a line that I heard, believe it or not, John Bon Jovi say. And John Bon Jovi the person asked John Bon Jovi how he was doing, and John Bon Jovi said, "Dude, I've been good since the day the doctor slapped me on the butt." And, you know, and I've had that kind of life, and I'm so grateful of it. I've been so lucky and fortunate. And one of those big pieces of fortune is the idea that I get the opportunity to work at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And it's neat when you see these guys like JR and Big Al or Al Jr., or these guys come around, and the young people that know who they are and go want to talk to them, want to shake their hand, want to get an autograph. I said to Roger Ward one year, I said, "What is it like when these young kids know who you are and come talk to you?" He said, "I'm astounded. I can't believe it."
Yeah, here's another thing. Here's a story, a quick story. But when Danica was still with us, I saw Danica leaving the track, and she's going up into Gasoline Alley. She's going through the break there at Gasoline Alley, and I saw a young girl there. Now, I can't make too many assumptions, but based on her dress, she wasn't a wealthy child. You know, she wasn't a strikingly attractive child. I had the sense of this could be a kid that gets bullied at school, and that's the mental health part of me. I'm looking at this kid, and I'm wondering what their life was like for them. And Danica stopped and signed that kid's autograph book, and that kid was jumping around and shrieking like it was the greatest day of her life. And I asked myself the question, if you had that power to make people happy like that all the time, then why don't you do it? I mean, you know, when I watch people who won't take the time to do that, I mean, we just inducted Dave Darland. The Dave Darland is known as the people's champ for a reason. And that is, no matter how great he has been, he has never, ever acted like he was anything other than you and me. And he always had time for people. And that's the simplest thing in the world. I mean, I don't want to look at, I know they're busy, but a lot of their appointment books are not full. They've got time to do that, and I wish they would do that more often.
Well, I invited Dave, and I'd forgotten this was sprint week, or midget week, and it starts tonight. And I said,
yeah, that's right.
He said, "I'm a little busy."
He's a little busy right now. I'm a little busy right now, Sam.
And he said, "Give me a call, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And he's always, whenever I've invited him,
Sure,
he's always been
he's a
here.
great guy.
And he's a guy that should have been at 16th in Georgetown. He won the opportunity. He got the license that Ron Hemmelgarn did the deal, but he never quite made it. And that's a shame. That's a shame.
He did it, but you know what? He's got thousands of fans across the country, and he's done what he's loved to do for a really, really long time. And he has the respect and admiration of his peers as well. So there's reward in that as well.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be nice to have him come
Oh, it
here
would have
and
been great.
and bring the fans with him? Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
because he was, I mean, you know, he's a kid of the most amazingly humble roots, and it would have been a great Indiana story, but it didn't happen.
Now, with what you are and what your degree is in, when you're talking to race drivers, do you kind of wonder, is this guy all right? Is he doing what? you analyze anything? Or
No, I try to turn that side off. I mean, you know, I will tell you that when I was the state director of mental health, an article came out in the paper, and for a while I had drivers coming to me and wanting to talk about their girlfriend, and my kid won't behave, and that was a little, my cover was blown. That was a little bit problematic for a while. I don't. Race drivers are on the bell curve like everybody else. There are some just tremendous human beings, and there's some that are less than that. On the average, I think most are on the good side of things, and I like that about them. Those that I think treat other people poorly or treat their significant others poorly or their children poorly, I just try not to hang around.
Well, I think, particularly in IndyCar, and in NHRA for that matter, the drivers take the time. Even John Force, who's got more things to do than you can shake a stick at, but he'll stop and sign an autograph and pose for a picture.
Two things about that real quickly, if not three, Don. First of all, I've said this a million times, and that was from doing your show years ago when you would bring the NHRA guys in here for the U.S. Nationals. I was just astounded. And I shouldn't have been, but I was astounded at their professionalism. They're just incredibly professional people. I took my son out to the U.S. Nationals one time, and that whole business that every ticket is a pit pass. And Kenny Bernstein was working on his car way back in his trailer, and I took my son up to the stanchions, and Kenny looked up. I never said a word. And Kenny left what he was doing, walked up to my son, turned him around, and signed the back of his T-shirt. It's that sort of thing that really makes a lifelong fan. So you're right, and I think by and large we have very professional people we can be very proud of.
I did a program at when Hooters used to be out here on 38th Street,
right.
And Kenny Bernstein was my main. He was on there for 20, 30 minutes. It was great. I got a letter from him, signed by him, thanking me for inviting him and taking the time to do it. That's the only one I've ever gotten. I got it framed somewhere.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I got there was something else I wanted to share. When an article came out on my school has its own alumni newsletter. It's a magazine format, and there was a story on me going in the Sprinker Hall of Fame, etc. A social worker in town saw it and called me and said, I've got a guy, one of my clients, he's in hospice and he has a few weeks to live. The man was in his 50s. And it said his one dream in life was to sit in a race car. Could you help me? And I thought it over. I called Michael Harker, who I'd known from his days at USAC, and John Force Racing opened their doors to that guy, put him in a race car. They sent me pictures of that guy, and he was so incredibly happy. We can sit there and think that John Force should have done that. John Force didn't have to do that. His team did not have to do that, but they did it. And I'm telling you, that just speaks volume about them.
Without question. And, when you listen to him, I've had him here a couple of times, and all I had to do was ask one question. I went and sat down.
Oh,
that
that's
was the end of it.
That's John Force, yes.
Yeah. He does know how to chatter.
He does.
Well, I couldn't have been happier when I saw announced that you were going to be inducted, and I saw that the pictures from you there. I was thrilled for you. I think it's more than deserved. You should be there. You deserve it, and as you said, Brad should be tailing along with you as part of the reason. But I love listening to you. You're a historian. You know what you're talking about. And I've said this a lot of times. You get a broadcaster that doesn't know the sport and is put with a microphone, the fans will know right away that they haven't got a clue. But everybody listening knows you know what you're talking about.
Well, just a couple of things. One, and I said it in Knoxville, first of all, but I'm not the guy who put my butt on the line. I mean, Tony Elliott, Dave Darlin, Terry McCarl put their butt on the line. John Singer and Guy Furberg were the mechanics who turned wrists. I had a very small part in the sport. I've tried to do it the best I could. But I will say this came up. Probably one of the proudest moments of my life is in this part of my life is I was in the old tower at IRP, and it was the Kroger 200, and I turned around and Benny Parsons was standing behind me, and he says, I appreciate a man who's done his homework. And that meant a lot to me because it was really important to me, and it has always been important to me. Everybody can know who the stars are. I want to try to know something about the guy who nobody knows because that guy busted his rear, or woman, busted their rear to get there, and they deserve their moment in the sun. and they need others to know about it, and that was always very important to me.
One other thing I got to mention. It's been said that when you want a good pizza, you pack the car and you head west. And you go to Colorado, some little town called Nederland, I believe.
Netherlands, yeah.
What's with that? Now, I mean, to get a pizza, you can go to Donato's or somewhere. Why do you go to Colorado?
That's my son lives out there.
I know.
You know, I have a daughter in Chicago who has Howard Stores a PhD, and she works essentially. It's not officially. I don't want to overstate it, but she works as an art therapist with young women in a girls' home. And my son, who let's just say that he is a considerably more free spirit, and he lives in Nederland, Colorado, and he works as a restaurant manager. He's an excellent cook and baker, and he skis and he hikes and he has dogs and he runs and he played hockey. He was an outstanding hockey player. He played junior hockey in Canada. You know what? He really enjoys his life, and sometimes I look at that kid and I go, you know what? He's not white-knuckling anything. He sort of did it right. And my daughter's a valedictorian of her high school and graduated #1 in her class at Franklin College, and she white knuckles it all the time, but she's intense all the time. And it's just like, my God, if I could strike a balance between those two. But I'm proud of both of them. They're very different people.
A friend of mine lives out there. In fact, you were telling me about it, so I told him,
Right.
"You've been to Netherlands?" And he said, "Yeah." "You ever go to a pizza place?" He said, "No." "Do you like it?" "Love it." They went there. Now they've moved there.
It's a great town.
And he said,
Yeah.
he sent me pictures of your son in action.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
And he said, great guy, really a super guy.
Good
And
boy.
he's part of the reason they go there. Not
Yeah,
only
he
the
flew
food
in
good,
from there to go to the ceremony, which meant a lot to me.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
But to go all the way to Colorado for a pizza, I mean, come on.
that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Well, all I can do is congratulate you. I think
Thank you.
that you're more deserving than you admit to for what you've done, because you kept the fans appraised of what was going on. They knew you knew what you were talking about, and I know that the competitors appreciated it as well.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Knoxville National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, Dr. Pat Sullivan.
Pat Sullivan, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Next week, as I said, is going to be SVRA night. The president and CEO of SVRA, Tony Perella, will be here, and he'll have some special guests, he tells me. And I can assure you that who's coming, you will want to see. They'll be some of the best. So until next week, Don Kay saying thanks for watching, thanks for being here. Until next week, good night. Appreciate your time.
That was fun. Enjoyed it.
I hope I asked the right questions so you'd answer.